discussion isn't intended to highlight any specific equipment brand. Maintaining REVIT families can be a challenge for any manufacturer, and Multiteria is no exception. So some of the examples that Truman will be using were chosen randomly, and they're really for demonstration purposes only. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Multiteria's FCSI CEU education presentation today. My name is Michael Egan. I'm the Vice President of Multiteria. Multiteria is a leading retail serving line counter manufacturer. We're a subsidiary of Lakeside Manufacturing based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Today's presentation will have some live demonstrations that focus on three key topics involving REVIT that we thought you'd all be interested in. The first thing we're going to talk about is efficient ways to fix or modify manufacturers' REVIT families. We're also going to show you some new time-saving features when developing and editing equipment utility schedules. And also we're going to touch on easy steps on designing retail serving areas using REVIT families. But the purpose of the presentation is we thought it would be helpful to the design community to provide relevant, valuable REVIT process tips and information, maybe ease some challenges you may be experiencing or help solve some problems and increase productivity when working with REVIT-based projects. So I'd like to introduce today Truman Donahoe, who's the Vice President of Food Equipment Symbols. We'll also be joined by Jeff Lewis, who is their Director of Technology. Food service equipment symbols have been serving our industry for over 10 years in a REVIT capacity. They're located in St. John, Florida, just south of Jacksonville. Truman and Jeff are longtime food service design consultants, so they're very familiar, inherently aware of the design process. But they've also become leading industry experts in REVIT development. They have and continue to work with FCSI and other industry partners to create those standards that promote conformity among the many providers of REVIT content. So Truman, Jeff, thank you both for joining us and welcome to the discussion. I'd like to turn it over to Truman. And Truman, can you demonstrate some efficient ways to fix or modify some of the manufacturer's REVIT families, if you will?
I'd be happy to, Mike. Good day, everyone. I'm Truman Donahoe. I'd like to thank Multiteria for this opportunity to tell you about one of my pet peeves, incorrect REVIT families. Today, we'll look at some ways to correct them. The greatest problem I have using REVIT for food service design is bad equipment symbols. Families that may look right, but don't perform right. You all know what I'm talking about. I create my project, work on my design, check my views, all looks good until I check the equipment schedule. And what has happened? This long description won't work in a schedule. This floor trough has no description and no direct waste. This combi oven is a double. It should have two ovens connected. The same thing for the convection oven below. It should have two connections. And this one, this dishwasher, only have one of them. I don't know where they get two. And I come over here and I find out that it has no plumbing connections. So these are some common errors we find in REVIT families created for food service. Let's see how we can fix them. As a rule, if I see that a bad family will take too long to fix, I'll use a family from a different manufacturer, one who has good symbols. Let's have a look at the hose reel first. I cannot change the description in the schedule. If I go to the family, I can try to change the description in the types. But I see that it's grayed out. The only way to fix this solution is to edit the family. In the family, I select the family types button. I scroll all the way to the bottom till I get to identity data, and I see the problem. When the description or another parameter is in the formula column, REVIT locks it. So I'm going to clear this out. And put my proper description in here. Now, let's see. All right. Now, normally, I would save this to my faucets folder so I could use it again. But here's a hint I learned recently from Kevin Coachman. If you fix a KCL family and just save it, KCL will use that fix symbol the next time you choose it, rather than bringing in a fresh bad one from the cloud. So now we will save it, load into project and close. And in this dialog box, you always want the second choice. The first choice, overwrite the existing version, is if you have changed the graphics only. We changed the description parameter, so we want to overwrite the parameter value. Go back to our schedule. That looks much better, and I can actually add text up here. All right, the floor trough has no utilities, so we're going to go straight to the family, edit it. We're going to look at the family types again. It's got an indirect waste, which is wrong, but that didn't show up in the schedule, which leads me to believe that this is not an FCSI shared parameter. And this one obviously can't be because it's not spelled properly. So I'm not even going to bother with this thing. I'm just going to get rid of it. And I'll bring in one from a different manufacturer. Now let's see what that looks like. Anti-splash floor trough, 3.5-inch direct waist size, very good. Okay, now the double combi of it. A tip off that it won't schedule properly is that there is only one item number under identity data. There's 2 ovens, there should be 2 item numbers. Again, we can't fix it in the type properties, so we must edit the family. We open it up, and the first thing we do is add the missing item number. We go to family types, go down to the bottom to the new parameter tool. I believe that's a sheet of paper with the sunshine on it. I can't tell. It's going to be a family parameter, and we can call it what we want. We can call it top oven item number, second connections item number. We'll use top oven. The discipline is common. The type of parameter is going to be text. And we want to group the parameter under identity data. And we're going to make that parameter an instance. Being an instance means we'd be able to change it from the project level. Notice how the top oven is a single entity. The bottom oven is a group of parts. So the top oven has been nested into the parent. Now you can't always see the nested family, but you can always choose it from the project browser. We go over to the project browser, we look under specialty equipment. This is the family, this is the type. I want to select the type. Tell it to select all instances, an entire project, and you see the top oven highlight. Now I'm going to select properties. This far right column are the links between the nested family and its parent. So we're going to find the item number. We're going to link that item number with the top item number that we just created. We're going to save. Load into project and close. Always overwrite the existing version and its parameter values. We look at the schedule. Nothing has changed. That's because we need to add the second item number in the family. I scroll down here, I see item number 3, top oven item number. I'm going to make that 3A. Now I've got 2 entries, 120, that looks good. Let's clean it up. We've got 2 electrical connections, 2 amps, 2 cold waters, 2 gas sizes, and 2 BTUs. We're now correct there.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I noticed you're typing a lot of the descriptions in lowercase versus uppercase. I mean, does it really matter, or is that just, you know, draftsman or designer's preference?
Well, several years ago, computer nerds discovered that the easiest text to read had the first letter of every word capitalized and the rest in lowercase. This is called title case. As designers, we were always taught that every letter should be a capital, but that dates back to hand drafting, where it was too difficult to make lowercase letters legible.
Interesting.
The double convection oven is similar to the combi. There's no parameter available for the second item number. So we go back to edit family. We're going to create the new item number first. Family types. New parameter. Family parameter. We'll call this one second connection. It's a family parameter. The discipline is common. Type of parameter is text. We're going to group the parameter under identity data. And again, it's going to be an instance. Now I need to select the nested family. I go to Project Browser, look under Specialty Equipment, select the type, ask it to select all instances in entire project. And there it finds a little something back there that I probably couldn't have found as easily as I found the top combi oven. So I'm going to go to Properties, come down the Links column, and I'm going to link the item number from the nested family into the second connection item number of the parent family. I'm going to save it, load into project and close. Always overwrite the existing version and its parameter values. And on this one, I'll go ahead and put the tag number in there. Call that one 4A. Have a look at our schedule again. Okay, now we have two connections. Let's clean this up. Top convection oven stacked, 120, 12 amps, NEMA 515P, looking much better. Now, the dishwasher, edit the family. In this particular item, the nested family is carrying the parameters for a booster heater with separate connections. So we need to create our family parameter. That's going to be the booster. Common. Text again. And identity data. And we're going to make that an instance. We'll go to properties. Oh, got to select our nested family first. Right click, select all instances and entire project. There it is again, it's hard to find. Go to properties, scroll down the last column, and we see that item number has already been linked. The nested item number was linked to the parent item number. That's a mistake. Let's link it to the booster heater item number instead. We save it. Load into project and close. Overwrite the existing version and its parameter values. And we look at the schedule. Now, I'm sorry, I forgot I've got to put the tag in here. 5A. That looks better. We've got two connections for the dishwasher. What do you know? It even released the plumbing utilities for us. So we'll clean this up. Again, I cannot change the description in the schedule. So again, I'm going to have to go back to the family, edit the family, and this will be just like the hose reel. We're going to go to description, clean that out completely, put our proper description in here. All right, I happen to also notice, oops, that the dish machine didn't have a conduit connection. So I'm going to add that. And this one is going to be a shared parameter because it's a utility. I select electrical, conduit. Okay, most of this gets filled out, except it's going to be, we're going to group the parameter under electrical. And we're going to leave that as a type because we don't want to change that. Okay. We save. Load into project and close. Overwrite the existing version and its family parameter. Dishwasher, ventless type, booster heater, got electrical. We've got 2 conduit connections. We've got cold water, hot water temperature, and an indirect waste. That looks good to me, and it wasn't too much trouble. So that's the end of the portion on fixing bad REVIT families. Let's have a look at how we can deal with our REVIT schedules better. You all know REVIT schedules can be large and cumbersome, difficult to deal with. On this one, it would be nice if the final column would repeat the item number column that's at the beginning. We can do that. We're going to go to our schedule, going to go to properties, going to add a field. The field is going to come in below the last one I pick. I want it at the very end, and it's going to be a calculated parameter. I'll call this the second item number. It is the formula, common discipline, and it too is going to be text. And it's going to equal the original item number. Now all I need to do out here is to change the title of my column. And that'll make it much easier to edit. Now over the years, REVIT has added some features to the toolbox of the schedules. Beginning in REVIT 2019, they added the ability to zoom. I accomplished this by holding down my control key and rolling the mouse wheel. In REVIT 2020, they gave us the ability to stripe the rows. Stripe rows, show stripe rows on sheets, make the first row the stripe color, the second row the stripe color, and this is the color. And I've been unsuccessful in finding a better color than the one that's in there by default. Those other colors come in much too heavy. And now you can see that the schedule is striped and the sheet is striped. Again, when editing my schedule, it's easy to get lost in here. But in Revit 2021, they added the ability to freeze the headers. And now I can find my column heads no matter where I am in the schedule. Now, just this morning, an architect asked me to change the date on every sheet in my Revit project. 1952. (12/29/21). This is an easy thing to do. I'm going to go to Schedule Quantities. I'm going to right click and tell Revit I want a new sheet list. To create the sheet list, I want to add the sheet issue date. I'll bet OK. And now I have the sheet issue date. I can go to Sorting Grouping, uncheck the Itemize Every Instance. Now I can put in the proper date. I can ungroup it again. And now all of my sheets have the same date without me having to go through and change each one of them. I thank you for your time. Thank you, Michael.
It looks really simple. You've made it look really easy. And I think over time, it'll probably get easier to be able to make these edits. Incidentally, I just want to tell the audience that we do have a PDF copy of Truman's section of the presentation that we'll make available to you for future reference. So, but well done, Truman. Thank you so much. So I'd like to turn it over to Jeff Lewis. Jeff, can you demonstrate some time-saving, like easy ways to develop equipment layout using Revit families? Do you have something available you could share with us?
Yes, I can. Can you all see my CAD screen or my Revit screen?
Yep, you're up. That's good.
Okay. First of all, before I start into layouts, we do need to know some things about Revit families. Truman went over quite a few of them. We do have things inside the FCSI has standards, and you can find that up at the FCSI website, the 2015 standards and the shared parameters lists. What I would like to show you is what the shared parameters look like and how they affect Revit. And this is what a TXT file looks like after shared parameters are created. As you can see, it is very involved. It deals with GUIDs and items as such.
Jeff, can I ask a question real quick?
Go ahead, Mike.
What exactly are shared and family parameters? I mean, how do they interact?
That's a good question. Let's come into that. Shared parameters, as you can see, are parameters that are created by a user, and in this case, the FCSI created them. They are parameters that can be scheduled inside a project. We got to keep in mind a Revit family and a Revit project are two totally different animals. The Revit families need shared parameters to share that data over to a project. It even gets further than that. Currently in family parameters do not schedule. Everything's pretty much written in these quick reference tags. The biggest thing about a family or a shared parameter, if you want an end user to do any manipulation, doing like what Truman showed, item numbers, it needs to be an instance. This gives the ability for it to show up in the properties box in the project side and to let the end user do some changes, whether it's a checkbox or putting in the item number. Types will not allow that. So let's come into shared parameters. A good thing you want to start with as a common practice is to create what we call a master family template, which is what this is. It's every single shared parameter available for the FCSI and or your company. And then from here, a good idea is to break it down into smaller templates like we have here. So that way it gives you access, quick access, without having to delete everything. You never want to create a family with too many family parameters. So we would not kick something like this out for, let's just say, a blender. You wouldn't want indirect waste and hot water and all that for a blender, of course. Another important thing to note is reference planes. You always want to cover your outside piece of equipment. Reference planes come in a couple different ways of creating them. We set up a left, right, front, and back. With typical food service equipment, your back two are pinned and they are defined origin. That defined origin in AutoCAD is your base point. And then food service equipment is typically your back left. What you dimension inside a REVIT project is crucial on what your reference planes are at. You want to set your reference planes as an is reference. You can use the named reference planes or a strong reference. This is the first thing a dimension in a project will pick up. If you have it a weak reference, it'll be picked up through a tab. And then if you just have a reference plane there for extrusions purposes, but not to be dimensioned to, it needs to be a not reference. So in most industries, it's always a strong or a not. Weak reference is not typically used. So as you can see, we've got a setup here. As contrary to belief, many reference planes do not add to a file size. You could have as many in there as you want. It's dimensioning and locking reference planes down does change the size. Let's come off of that for a moment and go into the CAD file that Mike was talking about. Here we're going to show a actual curved, nicely curved server unit. Something not typically seen, because anybody can come in and do a straight piece of equipment, straight server unit, pretty simple to come across, cashier station. But these curved ones will actually change how you want to approach building a REVIT family, especially in this situation. As I mentioned, building a REVIT family, you would typically want to put it on the back left. But being we're building a curved piece of equipment, you really want to change your thought pattern as to, before you even start drawing, to go ahead and pick either the front left or the front right. Because as we see, that's where the curve is going to be created. Even before starting to do any of the REVIT families, a plan of attack needs to be put in place. Some people would think these corners are always going to match up. That's not always true. You come in and we can see, as of this, that one matches up. That one matches up. But that one's off. So yes, your curve is not going to be consistent all the way through. So some of these will have to be done individually. Plan of attack from the top to bottom, as you see back in the back, that may be curved, but being supplied good drawings, we found out they are actually straight in the back, but curved up front. So always good to spend your time on the plan of attack before even going into a REVIT file. So what I'm going to go ahead and show you is the created project. And instead of drawing from scratch, from a bottom up and taking all that time, I'm going to do what's called a reverse engineer. We can go ahead and start on the cashier station. And as we can see, this is kind of an off piece from the curved servery. Go to town on it. Setting up your back left corner. Doesn't really matter where it's going to be set on something like this because it's an island piece. Just give them some good reference points. As you can see, all 3D geometry is turned off in plan view. This helps when it is being laid out in the plan view in the project. It does not bog down the computer's computing power. Lets you scroll things around. Anything that needs to be seen from the top, as you can see here, I've got it in what's called a wireframe. Go to hidden, and this is all we need to put any symbolic lines under specialty equipment. Anything that is going to be beyond that symbolic line, we want to put into under counter details if needed. You can see this does have two electricals in it. And you can notice, as Truman mentioned before, you have two electrical types. The electrical is the same. So we have a second item number in here, item, an electric 2 item number with the nest, electrical nest. All right, let's close off of this piece because it is your pretty typical REVIT modeling from the ground up. Now let's go into a curved piece. We also notice on this here is most of these sneeze guards are pretty much the same. Those you would want to build as nests. This is where the upfront planning comes into head. You can build those first, come around, and in my case, I built the doors as a nest because they were going to be used in multiple places. When you build a nest, the more it's used in that same project, the less space it will take up. So let's go into this curved piece. So instead of having the freedom to be able to draw this as you would the cashier station or any straight piece, a lot of sometimes sweeps will come into play. So that's something you got to determine as you're going. But the biggest thing when you start the servery unit is you want to set up your elevations because this will be consistent through every piece. Even though you may copy it and erase every single extrusion on it, but at least all the elevations will match and it'll save you a headache down the road as far as when you start to line this up for checks or how it fits in the project. So as you can see, I've got the counter, the top, which the nested food shield sits on top. And you can notice I used no reference. Your naming of the reference plane only helps because you are drawing from the bottom up. The feet, as we notice, the taper legs are nests because they're being used all over the place. But everything else on this piece, as you can see, it's a straight back, is going to give the ease of drawing. Now, when you copy this over, you can actually reuse these, so they're going to be the same. You just move them over reference planes, or at least the extrusions there, you redraw the extrusion. To give the end user multiple ways of adjusting this piece, we gave the ability of changing materials for the top. The base materials, as you notice, are all defaults. It gives the ability to change the actual base itself, the countertop, the kick plate, and the panel material, even though we may know these up front, but we want to give the ability to give them, to change them in the project and not have to change the family itself. There's something else I did want to go ahead and show you. Was in this setup, as you noticed in that last one I opened, there was no electrical. Well, that's because we do have a load center on these. Sometimes there's two, sometimes there's one. But this also does play into, as Truman talked about, multiple utilities. Both these load centers may carry the exact same voltage, but you do want to give some multiples, some of the extras, so they can be defined separately. Now, if these both carried separate voltages and separate FL amps, we would use a second volt, a second FL amps as family parameters, and then link those over to the second nest, which I have placed here. Luckily here we did not have to deal with that piece. That's two different voltages. And as you can see, I use the exact same elevations. The only thing that changed were the sides. Keep in mind, most anything you do in a Revit family will affect the Revit project in some way, form, or another. That is all I had as far as Revit families and the best practice of being able to put together a complicated survey or any other survey you could probably come up to imagine.
Thank you, Jeff. That was very helpful. It was good stuff. Truman, I did notice that you used Revit families that were specialized equipment. I understand in Revit 22, there's a new category called food service equipment. So how does one prepare for the category change? I mean, how do you adapt to that?
Michael, that's a very good question. Right now on my computer, I have Revit 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. And I have projects in all those 4 versions of Revit. That's complicated enough to keep them apart. 22 throws in another bag of worms. I'm going to wait until the architects force me into it. I'm going to stay with the specialty equipment until I'm forced to do a project in 2022. And then I'm going to have to convert my template from specialty equipment to food service equipment. It won't be easy. And then we'll have to worry about not only 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, but going back and forth between them. So I'm going to stay in specialty equipment as long as I can until the architects force me into it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting challenge, and I'm sure that we'll all find more about that as it gets more requested by architects and stuff. So anyway, thank you, Truman. Thank you, Jeff. This was really informative, and we really appreciate your contribution to the discussion. We also want to thank everybody who signed up, our guests, for attending today's education session. We do hope that you found it informative and helpful. So here's some contact information. I do want to remind the group that especially Truman's section or his portion will be available in PDF format for future reference. Also for future reference, a video link of this presentation will be on the FCSI webpage. And we welcome any questions or comments you may have, so please share them with us. We're also including 2 helpful links. Jeff had referenced the FCSI Revit shared parameters earlier, and also Autodesk Revit tips. We think that there's some helpful how-to tools on that webpage, particularly for new users of Revit. So you might want to take a reference to that too. At any rate, thank you all very much for your time. We appreciate you attending. Take care.